Welcome to AMI the A-Hole story from Drama-Street 16, where OP's mom cheated on her father and had an out-of-wedlock child with her affair partner, leading to an intense family dilemma. Let's dive into it. Would I be an a-hole if I tell my dad it's his fault my brother doesn't want to see him? Sorry for the long thread, but I just need some advice. So, I, 24 years old F, am not new to Reddit, but I made this account so nobody from my personal life find this. Anyways, for a bit backstory, I grew up in a semi-normal household, until when I was 14, as my dad discovered my mom was cheating on him after she got pregnant by the affair partner. After that, they obviously got divorced, but my dad stopped talking to my brother, 22M, who was 12 at the time, as we found out that he knew about her affair. I was really mad at my brother for not telling us, and even to this day I kind of resent him. But I kind of learned to understand that he was just a child, afraid to ruin our family. My dad, on the other hand, never really forgave him. When we went to my grandma's house, my brother would try to talk to him and apologized. But my dad ignored him completely. Then around the time when I was 18, my dad got remarried and he had a baby boy. My brother also gave up trying to make amends with him altogether, due to an incident that happened when we were at a family gathering at my grandparents' house. People were congratulating my dad and my stepmom, as one of the guests mentioned, now he has 2 boys to protect me, whatever that meant. My dad, however, responded in front of my bother that he only has 1 son, and the people around us kind of went quiet, some looking at my brother, as my stepmom scolded my dad for saying that, and to his defense, he did seem a bit guilty. And after that night, my brother stopped coming to my grandma's house altogether and never spoke to my dad again. Now for the main problem. It's been a few years, and my brother, now 22, recently ended up in the hospital due to a bad car crash when a drunk driver hit his car. He was in the ICU for a while and almost died, but is doing a bit better now, but had to get hip reconstruction and is still recovering. When my dad found out, he came rushing into the hospital, but my mom and my brother's boyfriend didn't let him see my brother, as mom reminded my dad he and my brother haven't talked in years and that my brother doesn't want to see him. It was a lot of arguing, until eventually my dad was asked to leave. I went with him, as he said, sobbing, he just wanted to see his son, and has kept coming to the hospital to see my brother, but is always met with the same outcome. I really feel for my dad, I really do. But at the same time, I think he needs to understand he and my brother no longer have a relationship due to what happened years ago. I feel that I would be a bit harsh to tell him it's his fault because at the end of the day, mom did cheat on him, and my brother knew. So dad obviously had the right to be angry, but at the same time he treated my brother bad, so it's obvious why my brother doesn't want to see him. What should I do? Please, I need some advice on how to handle this situation. Update. Hi, so I'm back. I came here a few days ago and I didn't expect to update so soon, but some things have happened in the past few days since the day I posted, and first and foremost, my brother knows dad wants to see him. I kind of brought up the topic a few hours after I made this post and told him dad has been coming to the hospital a lot. My brother didn't really say much about it and just told me to tell dad to leave. Me and his boyfriend also talked as I asked him if maybe he could convince my brother to talk to dad, but he told me he won't force my brother to do something he doesn't want to, and that right now my brother is not well enough to think about seeing my father, so it basically ended in that. I saw some of you pointed out how I blamed my brother, and I admit and take full responsibility that it was wrong on my part to blame my brother. Yes, I did resent him, and I feel so guilty about it looking back now, but I never once treated him badly or told him it was his fault. I was an angry teen who didn't know how to handle her family falling apart, but now I understand my mistake. Also, I did not abandon him like one of you said. When my parents divorced, both me and my brother stayed with our mom, as she had gotten full custody since dad wasn't in a good headspace. But we did go to grandma's house where he lived every other weekend. Due to the reality check I was given by some of you, I and my brother did talk a little more after the conversation I had with his BF, and I apologized for ever holding a resentment towards him. He told me it was okay and that he knew he should have told us about the affair, but he was scared. I low-key just broke down when he said that because it made me realize he also blamed himself for something I now realize wasn't his fault. We both cried a lot as it was the first time we actually talked about the affair and how it made us feel. I apologized a lot, and my brother forgave me and comforted me, telling me it wasn't my fault, which honestly made me cry more, because I honestly didn't deserve his forgiveness or kindness. Despite what many of you might think, I do love my brother and won't force him to see our dad. We basically only had each other when the divorce happened, as Mom was too busy with her pregnancy and her affair partner, and Dad was too depressed to do anything and wouldn't even see us and stayed at our grandma's house. As for my dad, one of you suggested he writes my brother a letter. I told him about it and he said he'll think about it. We kinda had a long talk. I asked him why he treated my brother so badly back then, as he began crying. He told me that over this past few days, he has been reflecting a lot and finally realized, or as he said it, accepted the truth, that he let out his anger in the wrong person. We finally talked about the affair, something I thought would never happen, as he never spoke about it. None of us did TBH. He told me how it really hurt him what Mom did, and when he found out my brother knew, he kinda just shut down and didn't know how to react. He and my brother have always had a strong relationship before the affair, and that's why my dad felt betrayed in a way. This is where I think I might have been too harsh, but I asked if that's the reason why he said in front of everyone, my brother wasn't his son. I know some of you told me to not point fingers, but I couldn't help myself, as I was the one that comforted my brother that day. My dad told me that he and stepmom actually got in an argument after that incident, as she didn't like the way he spoke about my brother. He said that's when he kinda started to realize his actions were wrong, but my brother stopped showing up after that. So Dad thought it was better for both of them to move on from this. He told me that he knew from all those years ago that he was wrong for saying that, and that he should have talked to my brother, but his pride was too big. He told me how he wished he had said something all those years ago, because now it took for his son almost died for Dad to finally set his pride aside. I told him that unfortunately, he made the decision for both himself and my brother to move on and go no contact. So now, these are the consequences. I know I was a bit harsh, but I feel he also needed to understand these are unfortunately the consequences of his actions. We talked and cried a bit more, and he also apologized to me, as he said he knew I basically became the parent for my brother and little sister, Mom's affair baby, because Mom was too busy with her affair partner and other boyfriends she had after she broke up with the affair partner, and Dad was too depressed to act like a father. He told me that neither I nor my brother deserved what he and my mom did, and he is sorry that it took for this to happen in order for him to wake up. But yeah, for now that is the update. Honestly, I don't know if my brother wants to see him, and after I myself getting a reality check on how I contributed to all this, I don't blame my brother and won't force him into seeing Dad. This is probably the last update I do unless something major happens. But not all is lost, as even if my brother and Dad never talk, at least from all this, I did learn an important lesson thanks to some of the comments. I will say though that although some of the comments left were harsh, they were definitely a wake-up call for me to realize that if I don't want to lose my brother, I need to work on myself and fix whatever trauma I had left from my parents' divorce. It also made me realize that I definitely gave my dad too much grace. Back then, although I did think my dad was harsh with my brother, I never said anything, as I thought that he had a right due to my brother knowing about the affair. I now know that was wrong, and that my father is an awful person for doing that to my brother. I just didn't realize it, because I saw my dad as a victim of my mother's affair. My brother has every right to not see him as a father, and as many of you said, Dad now has to face the consequences of his actions. OP is not an AH for showing mirror to her father. Instead, OP's father is an AH, a big AH for trying to punish his son for what he never did. The actual culprit was his wife. As for scores, I would rate OP's dad 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP's mom gets 4.5 out of 5, and OP lies on 0. Let's now jump on to the next Am I the Butthole story from top_sound 3762, where OP's sister-in-law is the ex-girlfriend of her fiancé, and now she wants to spoil their relationship with below-the-belt tactics. Sister-in-law is bitter. Her ex proposed to me, and this got her banned from our family. Aita for this? This may be a little confusing, but I will try to make it as clear as possible. My 27F fiancé's ex is now my older brother's wife, so my SEL. To make it less confusing, my fiancé is George, my brother is David, and my SEL is Ella. George, 38M, briefly dated Ella, 34F, 4 years ago. Ella wanted to get married and have kids, but George did not want this with her. He was also having a lot of issues back then, partying, doing drugs, and not being the most reliable person. They dated for 6 months, and everything ended in drama because Ella was not able to make George want to settle with her. Soon after their breakup, she met my brother, and they got married 6 to 7 months after. So yeah, they moved really fast. And basically, Ella dated her ex, broke up with him, met my brother, and got married to him. Everything in only 1 year and a couple of months. I met George 2 years ago, and at that time, Ella was already married to my bro. Back then, I had no idea that George was Ella's ex. When George started to feel attracted to me, he changed completely. He quit drinking and doing drugs. He has been sober ever since. Started going to therapy, and overall became a new person. He did this because he wanted to change, and I have been with him during his entire healing journey. I am very proud of him, and we have a healthy and amazing relationship. Even if Ella was already married to my brother, she was furious when she found out I was dating George and that he was serious with me. She was so cruel and said a lot of nasty lies. She used to tell everyone that George was grooming me. I was 25 when we became a thing, and he was 36. This is not grooming. She lied that George was abusing me, trying to get me to become an addict like him and many other things. This ruined my relationship with my brother because he never did anything to make her stop. George and I announced our engagement to my family last week during my dad's birthday. My parents were happy for us, but Ella said, "It must be nice to be the one to get the ring after someone else struggled to fix him." Again, no reaction from my brother as usual. My parents told her to stop, but I just snapped and told her something along the lines, "He fixed himself, UPOS, and yes, it is nice to know I will be married to the man I love more than anything, and who loves me the same. But how is it for you knowing that no one else except my idiot brother ever wanted to marry you? Does it feel nice?" My parents kicked them out after this. They told her that everybody had enough of her BS. She is insane because although being married, she is still bitter over the fact that her ex did not want her. She is officially banned from every family event, and my brother is now blaming me. So, Aita in this situation? I don't think I am, honestly, but I want to also hear some unbiased perspective. Update. This update will be very long, so if you don't want to waste time reading the first part, you can skip directly to the actual update. Thank you so much for all you comments and reaching out to me. I don't know what I accepted when I posted. I guess I wanted to receive some unbiased feedback from an outside perspective, but I never expected this. I was really overwhelmed with how kind and nice most of you were, so once again, thank you and sorry for not being able to reply to all the comments. For those who were not on the same page, I understand and respect that you have a different opinion. From my initial post, I have left out a lot of details because it's a long story, but some of you were curious about what actually happened and asked me to provide more details, so buckle up, I will do just that. How I met my future husband. I got asked a lot if I live in a trailer park or small town with only a bar available. The answer is no. We actually live in a big city with a population of a couple millions of people. I met my fiancé through a mutual friend. My girlfriend was dating one of George's colleagues, and they all began to hang out for drinks after work since they were all in the same building. At some point, I had no plans for that day, and my girlfriend invited me to go with them to a bar, and this is how we were introduced. After this, we started having different group activities together, and things slowly progressed. George targeted his ex's younger SIL to spite her / There was no coincidence that we started dating. As absurd as it may sound, it was indeed an ironic coincidence. You may think out of the millions of people there are in a city, what are the chances for you to start dating your SIL's ex? Well, it happened to me, and we did not know about it in the beginning. The girlfriend that asked me to go with them to a bar did not know Ella, never saw her IRL, and she never saw her with George. When George met me, he had no idea that I had any connection to Ella, so there was no chance for him to be an evil mastermind and intentionally date me just to spite her. I did not take George home to meet my family immediately either. Maybe I am the weird one, but I was never the type to parade my boyfriends in front of my parents if I was not sure the relationship was going to last. I broke the girls' code. I do not consider that I did. Let's be clear, I have a couple of true friends. They have been my friends for many years, and I would do anything for them. I am a very loyal person, and I know the girls' code very well. When we eventually found out the connection Ella had with both of us, I was shocked, and I asked the same question that many of you did. What were the chances? It was a very uncomfortable position to be in. Even though I had no relationship with Ella, except the obvious one of her being my SEL. It was strange to know that they dated. I wanted to find out what happened before taking any decision, and I did. The way I saw things, there was no reason for me to punish George for having a past. We were in love, we were happy, and Ella was already married to my brother. I may have been selfish, but I thought, is this man and our relationship worth it? And the answer was yes. To me, he was, is, and will always be worth it. Also, we see my brother and Ella only a couple of times/year. Most of the times, for obvious reasons, we prefer to visit my parents separately. George's addictions, so many of you reached out to me being concerned about this, and I wanted to thank you for caring and say I am sorry you had to go through traumatic experiences with addicts. Some of your stories were hard to read, and I appreciate immensely that you were open to share your experiences with a stranger. I understand why most of you were triggered by my story, but George was not that type of addict. He had a lot of unresolved trauma. He was lonely, unloved, and ashamed, so his coping mechanism were parties, alcohol, and drugs. His entourage was also not the best. You can imagine that a bunch of 36-year-old party boys/girls are no good, but at the end of the day, when everyone else went home to their families, wives, and kids, these were the people who could provide company to George. I think it was more like all of them providing company to each other so they could feel less lonely. But other than this, George was a functional adult. He had a stable, well-paying job. He was and is still working as a software engineer. He was never violent, etc. George changed for me. No, George changed for himself, and because he wanted to. He told me that I was the trigger that made him want to get his life in order, but in a more meaningful way than just wanting to get into my pants. When we started hanging out as a group with my friend and his colleague, he learned how easy it was to interact and have fun without drugs or alcohol. He also saw that I enjoyed spending time with him. I looked forward to seeing him every time, and he understood that his sober self is not unlovable. He was longing for healthy relationships and normality, but until that moment he felt like he was not deserving to have them. I think the way I helped him was solely because I saw and fell in love with his true self, and that gave him confidence and purpose. I am the golden child. There is no such thing in our family. My parents love my brother and I the same. Of course, when they heard Ella's BS the first time, they were worried for me, but I was open with them. I told them how things happened. George was honest and never hid his troubled past from them, and in the end, they were okay with our relationship. My parents trust me, trust my judgment, and they only want to see me happy. And in regards to Ella, my parents are just doing what every parent should, defend their child. She was warned before. My parents talked to her, asked her to stop acting like this, and told her she is out of line, so it's not like they kicked her out the first time it happened. Now, into the update. Yesterday I contacted my brother and asked him to meet me for coffee. It was only the two of us, and I think it was the first time I have opened my heart like this in front of him. I started off by apologizing for him being caught in the middle, but I told him I will never apologize or be sorry for loving George. I was honest and told him how much this situation has been affecting me. My brother is the same age as my fiancé, so he is 11 years older than me. During our childhood, he was my protector, the person I looked up to. Due to our age difference, we never really had many activities in common, and I could not wait for the moment I grow up, so I can get to share more with my brother as adults. But I did not get the chance to do this because of Ella. David would always teach me to value myself, to choose people who treat me right and make me happy. However, I am not able to share my happiness with him anymore. I understand why he would wish I never met George, but it still hurts knowing that your brother somehow resents the source of your happiness. David would always defend me when I was younger, even in front of our parents. When I was 15, I was experimenting with makeup, and it looked bad, really bad. During a family function, one of our uncles got drunk and told me to stop using makeup because I was too young to look like a hooker. David got mad and kicked him out for offending his sister. This is the kind of brother he used to be, and to now see how he stays aside and allows his wife to be offensive and cruel, it's really hurtful. I do not care that she is like that towards me. I don't like Ella at all, and I could easily ignore her. But what gets to me the most is she constantly trying to belittle and humiliate my future husband. I have lived with this man for 2 years. I have shared so many things with him during this time, and I am certain I know better what kind of man he is. I know how hard it was for him to heal all his trauma. I know how hard he worked day by day to become the best version of himself. I know how much he loves me, protects me, supports me, and I simply lose it when I hear her crap, and how she is constantly trying to bring him down. Yes, I go bear mode when he is involved, as someone told me in the comments, but I don't care. I will not allow any of my family members to abuse the person I love. I may have tolerated things for my brother's sake, but I will never be quiet in front of his of a wife. I told my brother that I love him, and I will always cherish the memories I have with him, but we cannot go on like this. I understand he is a victim, and I am ready to do anything for him if he is willing to accept that his marriage is not good, that Ella is not a good woman and is abusing him. I cannot force him to divorce her because this has to be his choice, but I told him I will accept his decision no matter what that is. He will always be my brother, but George is my family now. We plan on having kids in the near future, and there is no way in hell I will ever allow his lunatic of a wife to be near my kids. I also refuse to subject George to the abuse. We tried. We thought that this rough period will eventually pass, and that everything will be okay. But unfortunately, Ella became more and more bitter and disgusting. We will still see my parents, but I am standing my ground and will not go to their house if she is present. David and I cried a lot, and for the first time in many years, I felt like I had my brother back. He apologized over and over again, and explained a lot of things to me, which gave me the chance to understand him better. But at the same time, I am so angry that I had no idea what was happening to my brother. Some people said that David was a rebound for Ella, but it seems they were both a rebound for the other. What made them marry so fast was the age pressure. My brother was feeling like it was very hard to connect with someone, and the prospect of being able to have a family of his own seemed very far away, until Ella came and offered him the possibility to have exactly what he wanted without too much struggle. So yeah. In the end, I guess we are all some messed up people in a way or another. I don't know what's going to happen. David said he plans to take some time, go away alone for a couple of days, and think what he wants to do. But he said that when he'll be back, he wants to have a chat with George to apologize to him as well for everything that has happened. My brother knows that everything Ella says is false. He said everyone is able to see how much George loves me and that we make a great couple, and there are times when he wished to also have something like this in his life. He told me he is proud of the woman I have become and that no matter what happens, I will always be his little sister. After this, I went home and cried some more with George besides me. I have tried to play strong and denied myself to feel hurt for so long that yesterday I have finally exploded. But it was good because now I feel better. OP is not an AH here. Her sister-in-law manipulated the situation, spreading false accusations by making cruel comments about OP and her fiancé's relationship. That's why she got banned from family gatherings. OP's sister-in-law is an AH for continually getting herself involved in others' matters. So, I would rate her 2 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets 0. Let's move on to the next story form, Illustrious-Sky-713, where OP's friend cancelled wedding venue 2 weeks before the date. Aita for wanting truth revealed after a friend cancelled wedding venue 2 weeks before the date. Okay, so I'll try to keep this short, but in a timeline that is accurate. We have been friends with another couple for 3 years. Let's call them Adam and Sarah. Back in January, my fiancé started working for them in their dog training business. And in February, we all agreed to have our wedding on their personal residence, and where they run their, now found illegal, dog business. We shook hands and agreed on a price, $800, and started planning. 2.5 months before the wedding, Adam texts us and says, "Hey guys, I guess you're having your wedding here because it's our address on the invitation." I said, "Yes, of course it is. We agreed on this months ago." He said, "Okay, well, we haven't received 50% deposit, so it has not been confirmed." I'm like, WTH, but I just say, "Okay, I'll send you the money." Cool, done. When we shook hands, we agreed to get a special event permit as this residence is out in the middle of the desert. There are neighbors who have called the cops on the previous owner for throwing huge parties and loud music. Adam said, "Okay." 4 weeks before the wedding, we took them to dinner, and he expresses concerns about music and the permit. He said he doesn't want a permit. We suggest he talks to his neighbors. He is against it. He said he would need us to end the party at dark, 6 p.m., and Sarah stood up for us. She said it is the biggest day of our lives, and that is a ridiculous idea. 10 p.m. will be fine. The permit is to allow 50-plus people and protect from complaints and cops showing up. We have 65 people total. 2 weeks prior, we schedule a time to walk the property and go over last details. They haven't expressed any or much of their needs at this point, other than allowing us freedom to plan as we wish and telling us whatever they can do to make our day excellent, let them know. Awesome friends, right? Nope. At the meeting, they tell us nobody is allowed inside to use the restroom. We will need facilities. I tell them it's so soon, and it will be hard to find that. They say, oh well. Then, he tells us again we need to end at 6 p.m., but now agrees to get a permit. We are at the limit to do that. The next day, we receive a text message and voice memo. They are canceling our venue and will refund our money. Absolutely zero compassion. Just, we want you to have the best day ever, and our land won't allow that. Adam calls me and tells me how good this will be. My soon-to-be wife is in tears. He tells me we are not the victims, and he's doing a good thing. What the actual f***? My family is traveling to Arizona from North Carolina, and hers from California and Hawaii. Everyone has flights, accommodations, etc. Not only are we faced with replanning our wedding just 2 weeks out, but also my fiancée has to quit her job. I mean, who can work for someone who could do that to someone? I am not a revengeful person, but we live in a small spiritual town, and these people claim to be abundant business owners and coaches, pillars for the community, people who stand in integrity, and this is not it. They spoke when they cancelled about not being bothered if we come out publicly. I think this was a front because it scares the shit out of them. ITA, for wanting people who are looking to do business with them to know what kind of people they are, reporting their illegal business practices. I do not want to get into a legal battle, but this has been a really hard situation. OP is not an AH here. He's just trying to reveal the reality of his so-called friends who messed up their wedding by cancelling the venue at the 11th hour. The way they cancelled their wedding venue just a few days before their wedding is unjustified, because OP's guests were from other states, and it would embarrass them in front of all their guests. OP's so-called friends are jerks, and I would rate them 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP and his fiancée get none. Let's now jump onto the next story from Dorsal_12, where OP cuts off with her dysfunctional family, and now her sisters are blaming her for prioritizing herself over the family. Ida for telling my mom it is not my fault she stayed with my father, and that I shouldn't be the one suffering from it. I, 30F, grew up in a dysfunctional family. My father is a narcissist with alcohol and gambling addictions, which started when I was in my teens. My mother has suffered from depression for 20 years, with ups and downs. My father was always verbally abusive toward my mother and us children. Since developing his gambling addiction, things have only gotten worse. He started lying and neglecting basic needs, like food or rent. We were even kicked out of our homes twice. He used up all our savings and even sold my mother's gold jewelry to fuel his addiction. The worst part is that he still blamed everything on my mother, trying to manipulate us kids into thinking she was a bad mom and he was the victim. Because money was always an issue, and at the time, my mom only worked as a cleaning lady. My sisters and I had to start working long hours when we were just 13. After school, I worked as a waitress, and during school holidays, I worked almost every day. At times, I even had 3 jobs at once. As I grew older, I began speaking up to my father, calling out his lies and everything he had done to us. I protected my mom every time he tried to blame her, but she always tried to silence me, telling me I couldn't talk to my father that way. We begged her to leave him because we couldn't take it anymore. The constant anxiety, waiting for the next bad thing to happen, not knowing which bill to pay or where the money for the next meal would come from. Those who grew up like this will understand. But she wouldn't leave him because of my youngest brother. She said he would be traumatized growing up without a father. So, apparently one son was more important than 4 daughters who were suffering. Despite everything, I somehow managed to finish school with great grades and moved an hour away for university. I worked hard to support myself and sent money to my mom. I came back almost every weekend to help her with housework, finances, and just to listen to her. Even though I couldn't stand being at home, the very thought of home put me in fight or flight mode. I went back for her. Years passed, and my mother completed a nursing course and found a job with a good income. She could live comfortably, pay bills, and even save money. This made my father stop contributing anything to the household at all, because she handled it all. He lived his own life, had affairs, and lost all his money to gambling, while my mother took care of everything at home. Not only did she pay for everything, she also cooked for him, washed his clothes, etc., and barely called him out or asked him to do his part. I constantly argued with my father because of this. I told my mom to stop everything for him until he contributed something, but she never listened. My brother grew up and turned into a version of my father. He expects my mother to do everything, only works occasionally, and when he does, he never gives my mom any money. He's become aggressive toward us girls, and even tried to fight me once when I confronted him about living off our mom. After he tried to physically fight me, I cut off contact with him. My mother just stood there crying, and the next day, she cooked for him as if nothing had happened. Every time I go home, she complains about how those two make her life miserable, and I tell her it's up to her to speak up and stop doing everything for them. But then she gets angry at me for saying that. 2 years ago, I met the sweetest guy, and we're getting married next year. He's not only the most handsome man I've ever seen, but he also has the kindest heart. He loves me deeply, is caring, and understanding. My mom always makes a point of letting me know that my fiancé is out of my league and I should never criticize him and always do what he wants. But that is not how I plan my life. We have a healthy relationship and talk about everything. I've also met his parents, who are just wonderful. His mother, like mine, also suffers from depression, but I feel so welcomed and free to be myself around them. I often wonder how my life turned out if I had parents like this. My life has changed dramatically. I feel loved, supported, and at peace, something I've never felt before. That is, until I have to see or talk to my parents. Recently, things escalated when my parents and brother were moving. My brother didn't lift a finger to help with his own move. I asked my mom to tell him to help out, instead of letting his sisters do everything, but she got angry at me, saying I always caused problems and that he wouldn't listen to her. That wasn't the point. I just wanted her to speak up for once in her life, but she failed me again. I told her how I spent the best years of my life working myself to exhaustion for her when I could have been enjoying my youth, and how she never had my back. Every time things got hard, she chose not to stand up for her daughters because she didn't want the stress. But I didn't want it either. I didn't choose this life or this father. It's not my fault she chose to stay with him. I told her how disappointed I was that she did everything for my brother while he exploited her. I couldn't take it anymore. I told her she lost a daughter, and things would never go back to how they were. Since then, I've avoided going home, and we rarely speak. As guilty as I feel admitting it, my life is so peaceful now. I'm finally doing things I couldn't before, feeling motivated, and even started my master's degree. My sister urges me to talk to my mom and reconcile, but that's the last thing I want to do. I understand my mom had a horrible life, and that her depression played a huge role in her behavior. As a woman, I feel deeply sorry for her and wish her so much that she deserves a better life. But as a daughter, all I feel is pain and disappointment. Why did she put all her burdens on us and expect us to never complain? Shouldn't she want a better life for her daughters? OP is not an AH here. Rather, her mom is an AH who never stood up for herself and never cared about the well-being of her daughters and herself. Her mom seems to be an ancient soul who prioritizes her son over her daughters. OP's frustration is 100% justified, and she is not in the wrong for cutting ties with her dysfunctional family. So OP is not an AH here, and I would give her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. As for OP's mom, she is an AH, and I would rate her 2 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move towards the last story from Will You Still Love Me 6-4, where OP's wife is trying to claim his late brother-in-law's estate, despite the fact that he had excluded her from his will. Aita, because I am going against my wife and trying to prevent her deceased brother's estate from being plundered? My brother-in-law recently passed away from illness. He was a good man. Honest, hard-working, and self-made. He was a bachelor and never had kids. My wife, his sister, is made of the same stuff. She too is a hard-working, honest, and good woman. Much of the rest of her family are, in my opinion, a bunch of freeloaders. My mother-in-law is 90 years old and lives off her meager social security income. She lives in a rundown home in a rough neighborhood, but she is healthy and makes do. My sister-in-law lives with Mom. She hasn't worked a day in the 15 years I have known her, supposedly has a heart condition, but smokes and drinks, and she lives off her mom's income. In addition, she uses Mom's credit card to shop online and has run up tens of thousands of dollars in credit card debt that Mom can't afford to pay. Her son, our nephew, is 45 years old and has never held down a job for any length of time in his life. He grew up living in his grandparents' home with his mom, and now lives with and off his girlfriend. His 90-year-old grandmother still even pays some of his bills for him out of her social security income. The way these people take advantage of my Emile makes me sick. My wife and I are decently successful, and we pay lots of Mom's bills and frequently send her groceries and other items my wife shops for online. When she needs a new stove or refrigerator or air conditioner or water heater or whatever, we foot the bill. We are happy to help Mom, but we know we are indirectly helping her parasite family members as well. My brother-in-law has an estate worth about $300,000, a modest and rundown house, a couple of old cars, and some money in the bank. Before he passed, he came to us and asked us to help him get his affairs in order. He wanted his estate to help his mom live the rest of her life comfortably, and he was afraid that the other family members would plunder it. He too was bothered by the way his family members took advantage of his mom, and he hoped we could help prevent that from happening. We helped him get a will, powers of attorney, and a trust. He made my wife and me co-trustees so that we could make decisions together, and so that my wife would not be emotionally pressured by her family to make decisions against his wishes. As a non-blood relative, and as one who is more critical of the abuse, my BIL counted on me to help keep his wishes followed. Now fast forward to today. My wife told me that her mum wants to give one of my BIL's vehicles to this freeloading nephew. It's a restored old vehicle worth about $25 to $30K. No good for driving, it's a collector's car. Mom doesn't really understand the details of BIL's estate, even though we've tried to explain it to her. I told my wife that the vehicle isn't Mom's to give. It's ours to sell and use the money for Mom, to paint her house, buy her a new car, haul off junk, and get numerous repairs done to the house, and that her brother definitely would not have wanted it to go to his freeloading nephew. Unfortunately, my wife has already been emotionally swayed by her family, exactly what my BIL did not want to happen. I told her this, but she said, "It's not my decision, it's hers, because he was her brother, not mine. My position and wishes are second to hers." I got angry, and we had the biggest argument of our entire relationship. I told her, this is BS, and exactly the opposite of what her brother wanted, and that's why he asked me to be a co-trustee, and that as such, she can't make decisions about his estate unilaterally. But now, I am the angry jerk who she thinks is being controlling. But I think I am trying to honor my BIL's wishes and do what's best for Mom. Should I stand back and let my wife be influenced by her family to go against her brother's wishes? Or should I stand my ground, enforce my authority as co-trustee, and be at odds with my wife over this? There is no financial benefit to us either way. Eita? TLDR. My brother-in-law died and asked me to help prevent his estate from being plundered, and now my wife is being emotionally pressured to allow this plundering and she is caving in. Should I stand my ground and Eita if I do? OP is not an AH here. He's just trying to fulfill his late brother-in-law's wishes by selling his car to support his mother. So, I would rate OP's wife 2.5 out of 5, and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. What do the Mac Reddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the stories I brought you, just hit the like button, share them as much as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to Mac Reddit for a daily dose. Bye bye, see you tomorrow with some more spicy fries!